Good evening and welcome to another edition of Today with Dr. Wendy. My co host Larry Dersham and I have a great show for you tonight, and we're going to start celebrating. Celebrating that as San Diegans and as Californians, that we are officially back out of our homes. However, we're out of the black and into the purple. We are back in the purple tier, but that is a step in the right direction. I know a lot of you have been celebrating. A lot of you have been going out to your favorite restaurant that actually now has the patio open just in time for the cold, the wind, and the rain. And I'm going to ask Larry about that in just a minute. But we have officially returned as a state and certainly as a city and a county to the tiered system. Now, what does that mean? If you look at a map, you will see that most of California is out of the black but into the purple, as I mentioned. Our goal is to slide from purple to red, which is least restrictive in terms of where we are now and where we've been and where we hopefully are headed. We're not there yet. We still have to be very vigilant and careful as we have these new strains circulating that are more contagious. But it's also really making us give some pause and think about how we can help each other. What do I mean by that? Larry and his beautiful wife, they go out quite a bit to support local business. I can't tell you how much takeout we've had in the last couple of months because we're trying to keep everybody in business, and collectively we can do exactly that and help each other as a community. I mean, Larry, you have a great story about I don't want to steal your thunder, but enjoying an experience you never really thought you would under normal circumstances. Where did you go and what happened?
Right. It was just yesterday, Friday, Wendy, that we decided to go out for lunch at a Vietnamese restaurant. And it was really good. But, we went out there and it was pretty chilly yesterday, the weather, but we had to eat outside and we were under a tent, but it was still freezing. But we had some really hot soup, Vietnamese soup called pho. Uh, and it was just really enjoyable, except for the weather. So, but what was so funny, Wendy, every table was full and there was a line forming for people to get there. I think people are so anxious to get back to normalcy that when they had that green light to open up the restaurants, at least for outside, that people just kind of streamed over there. So it
Uh,
was enjoyable, but cold.
That's right. And you know what I love about that story, Larry, is under normal circumstances, we would go to a restaurant like that, and if we were asked if we wanted to sit on the patio, we would say, "Are you kidding me? It's
Right.
60 degrees." Yet here there was a line at the restaurant where you and your wife had lunch simply because people wanted to get out and go to a restaurant. Now, if we make it into the red tier, which I hope we do, then obviously there's going to be indoor dining allowed and indoor gyms and all of the types of things that we're used to. One thing I do want to mention about what happened this last week is when everything opened, suddenly, according to a lot of businesses, they were sort of caught off guard, many of which had just told their employees, look, don't expect to come back for a period of time. So they were pleased but not prepared. And that caused a big scramble at the beginning of the week, trying to put things together in time to try to open as quickly as they possibly could without necessarily having employees sitting by the phone believing they were going to be called back to work. Some of them weren't even in town.
Oh, yeah. You have to get prepared for that. And exactly, it's like it's hard to prepare because they open them up and then they close them down and so forth. It's kind of keeping us off balance as a workforce and as our economy. But luckily, the economy seems to be holding up pretty good so far, and
Well,
that's a good sign.
speaking of that, one of the ways in which we can help our economy is obviously by continuing to drive down the numbers. Like I always say, momentum depends on math. How many people are infected per 100,000 people? How many ICU beds do we have? But speaking of math, we also have to speak about masks because President Biden has instituted a mask mandate. Now, he said he would. That's what he ran on. He explained that this was going to be a big part of his 100 days. He wanted it to be, 100 days of masking. But we are going a little bit further than that. And I'm talking about the CDC order, the transportation restrictions. Now, here's what struck me about this, Larry, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. But, we've joked on the show before about, what's a mask? Is double masking a thing? We know we can't double dip, but should we double mask? What about triple masking? And people are actually asking these questions as we learn more about transmissibility. So this particular order actually defines something that had been undefined for 8, 9 months, and that is what is a mask? So the order actually talks about the attributes of masks that would be needed to qualify this transportation order. If you're on a bus or in a taxi or on a plane, they talk about cloth masks being made with 2 or more layers of a breathable fabric that is tightly woven, but you may have read about this, Larry, does not let light pass through when held up to a light source. So if light passes through, that is not an acceptable mask. So that also means no more bandanas, no more pulling your shirt up over your mouth, and you must have your nose covered also. So whereas many of the executive orders and the mandates, quote unquote, that different cities and counties and states were recommending, some even requiring, they were talking about face coverings. Now, per the CDC, you actually have to wear something that qualifies per the guidelines they're giving you as a mask. Is that what you saw when you were out for lunch yesterday?
Well, it's funny, Wendy, they talk about the masks have to be up to a standard where it doesn't allow light to pass through, was it?
That's
But what
right.
about the coronavirus, which is so small? I've heard from many medical professionals that the coronavirus is so small that it easily passes through most masks. Maybe the N95 is an exception, but I'm not sure this is going to do the trick as far as preventing the coronavirus from getting to a person's lungs, for
That's
example.
exactly why there are more and more articles about triple masking. Now, of course, those of us that have compromised family members, or many people have somebody that's elderly living with them, N95s are actually on this list, even though it has an exhale valve, because normally that would be something that wouldn't be permitted. So, I mean, I know lots of people that wear an N95 and then they've got the shield. So they're being very careful, not necessarily for themselves, but they're protecting somebody else. Many people can't take the vaccine or choose not to take the vaccine. And even if you're vaccinated, Larry, what would be to prevent you from touching a surface in one area and then touching another surface elsewhere? Those are the arguments. You know, we like to present both sides of everything. Those are the arguments that are being put forth in order to justify why we're being so careful. Now, obviously, I've told you about a travel-related restriction, so that wouldn't necessarily mean that that's going to apply to you when you're having lunch or when you're shopping at Walmart or doing anything else. But this mandate really has been something that's really been in the mix, because President Biden has sure been signing a lot of executive orders the last couple of days, maybe even a record amount in a record short period of time.
Oh, he absolutely has. And I'll tell you what, Wendy, this is just my own thoughts now. I'm going into my opinion mode here. Do you think that President Biden actually had those pre-prepared himself? Do you think that you don't have to answer this, President Biden actually read those executive orders? They came out so fast and furious. And this is one thing I want people just to know about. Did you know that President Obama and his wife, Michelle, live less than 2 miles away from the White House in a rented home? And in there, they also have his assistant, Valerie Jarrett, and her husband are living there too. And it says, according to Lisa's Daily Mail, it's from the UK, that his whole point of staying that close is he was trying to mount an impeachment effort against President Trump. So I'm just wondering, some people actually call this president that we have Joe Biden, or Joe Obama. Joe Obama.
Yeah, people are so clever with their acronyms. You know, the executive orders, I have a couple of thoughts on those. Remember, he fully intended to undo a lot of what President Trump had done. But even President Biden would agree with lots of actually bipartisan support that it is safer and longer lasting to accomplish things through legislation, through
Yes.
Congress, through actually, having new laws that he signs. Because executive orders, I mean, everything that he's putting into practice, whether you like it or not, over the last couple of days, if a Republican comes into office in 4 years or 8 years, could just all be undone. So I think he would be the first one to say, and he actually did say this on the campaign trail, that one of his selling points was his ability to reach across the aisle. You know, one thing President Biden is known for, it has been kindness. He really has had that soft touch in terms of building friendships, and the kind of person that maybe you do want to have a cup of coffee with. Now, you couldn't have a beer with President Trump because he doesn't drink, but maybe you want to have a beer with Joe Biden. So he has that likability factor going for him that might translate into the ability to pass more legislation on a bipartisan basis. So given that, many people are wondering, both Democrats and Republicans, why he's not going that route more likely and more frequently than signing all those executive orders.
Exactly. He should go through the legislative process. I agree. I worry a little bit, Wendy, about all the troops around the Capitol. They're talking about making a permanent wall around the Capitol. That's never
Mm.
been done. Very worrisome. And now the impeachment. They're trying to impeach a president that's out of office now. It's never been done before. It was tried back once in 1876 against,
1876. That's right.
yeah,
War
against this
secretary.
yeah, the war Secretary of War, because he was had some money dealings going on. He was out of office, but they actually impeached him. They had a trial in the Senate, but because he was out of office, nothing happened. But
He
he
was
did stay.
acquitted.
He was acquitted, and he stayed there in D.C. as a lawyer for the rest of his working days, I guess. But what's interesting about President Trump in the impeachment, they include they say that he's guilty of inciting a riot, but also that he's also guilty of spreading lies about the fraud. There was fraud in the election. Well, that could give him a window to fight back against that. So I'm hoping his lawyers will take that up and fight that.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting topic. We're going to talk more about it next week, obviously, particularly because so many Republicans don't even think we should have this trial to begin with, which would then, of course, be followed by the second vote designed to prevent it from holding office again. That is very interesting, and I promise we're going to talk about it, but we are going to take a break for now. We want you to stick with us. We have somebody on the other side of the break that is very astutely aware of our Second Amendment rights. We spent so much time on the First Amendment. We're going to transition to the second. So don't touch that dial, folks. We will be back with more Today with Dr. Wendy in just a minute. Back to Today with Dr. Wendy. I'm Wendy Patrick. My co-host Larry Dersham and I have a special treat for you this second half. So we tease this up that we're going to segue from talking about the First Amendment to the Second Amendment. A Second Amendment, of course, says a well-regulated militia being necessary to secure a free state, right of people to bear arms. We all know what it says. We also know that it can be very controversial, but very important. So we're going to have somebody on right now, I understand, that is an expert in Second Amendment law, a real diehard gun guy who just received 2 new kittens for Christmas. So it just goes to show you, Larry, everybody has a soft side. Who do we have on the line?
Yes, Wendy. Today we have Michael Schwartz. Michael is the executive director of San Diego County Gun Owners. It's a political organization that focuses on expanding and restoring Second Amendment rights within San Diego County. And SDCGO, that's the abbreviation for it, was formed to counter the passage of aggressive new government legislation and regulations designed to eliminate the firearms industry and the ownership and use of firearms. Welcome to the program, Michael.
And Michael, we know that you are a fellow KCBQ host yourself. We know that you have a program on Sundays, and I'm sure you'll let us know about exactly when that's on as well. But in reading your bio and looking into a little bit about who you are, what you do, and your platform, I love the kitten story because that is just adorable. And it made me think, how did a guy like this become interested in guns? How did this start for you?
Right. Hey, Michael, I'm going to go from the local level to the national level. Does your organization have any concerns about the effect of the incoming Biden administration that it will have on gun ownership rights in America? Wow. Mm, exactly.
You know, Michael, you bring up the good point about safety, and everybody that owns guns or that even supports the Second Amendment is just absolutely concerned about gun safety, and that encompasses everything from keeping guns out of the hands of the wrong people to making the background checks sufficient to the mental health issues you mentioned. But it also has to do with gun owners' responsibility to know how to store them, where to store them, who to keep them away from, how to use them. And I understand your organization really prioritizes gun safety, not just the right to own them, but really the mandate of knowing and the responsibility of knowing how to use and store them safely. Hmm.
I, Michael, if somebody in San Diego County wanted to purchase a firearm today, what would be the steps involved? Is there a background check? Is there a waiting period? How does it work?
Michael, it I was going to say, it sounds like it's a process that is very important for a lot of reasons. And I have to ask you, though, before we run out of time, I understand your organization hosts some gatherings, and I can hardly say this on the air because I'm sure it means something different than it sounds like it means. But I understand you host what you call shooting socials, which obviously means socializing with fellow gun owners. But what are those? Mm. I hope it is a dry event. So when I heard about the shooting socials, I said that has got to be a dry event. In other words, no alcohol, because we all know that when it comes to guns, and it sounds like your organization is right on top of all of this. If you are going to own a gun, like you said very articulately, it is a serious responsibility, and it sounds like that is part of the rationale for pairing new gun owners. We're not talking about pairing wine and food. We're talking about pairing experts with novices to make sure that the novices make it through all of those hoops. I know that unfortunately we're almost out of time, but tell us quickly about what time your show is on Sundays.
Uh,
Oh, I am so glad. Okay, so we started with kittens and we're ending with ice cream, and somehow we talked about guns in the middle of there. So I think that's a successful second half of the show. So thank you very much for everyone for joining us, and thank you, Michael, for joining us and explaining all of that to us as well. We want to wish everybody a wonderful, safe weekend, a great week. Please join us next Saturday, 6 p.m. for more of Today with Dr. Wendy. Headlines with a silver lining. Have a great week, and God bless you.